Poison Creeper! Poison Creeper! Poison Creeper! Poison Creeper! Ladies, gentlemen, and Harajam of all ages, after working on refining this build for a couple of days, I am finally ready to share it with you, and it makes me quite excited to do so. Up until this point before Season 1, doing a poison build on a druid essentially meant that you needed to do it in werewolf mode. There were a ton of werewolf and poison synergies, but today I have finally managed to make a build that is not only functional but genuinely good based around the Changeling's Debt aspect. One where an incomplete, unfinished version of this build was what I used to clear the Tier 4 Capstone at level 58, which I am really happy with as a druid, and I've been refining it for a few levels since then too. This aspect makes werebear skills consume the poison damage taken on an enemy, dealing up to 150% of its damage depending on the roll. I have always found this to be a super interesting concept, and as soon as the subterranean aspect popped up as being a new druid legendary for Season 1, my brain has been sort of worrying at the possibility of making what exactly I've done here actually function. My leveling build was based around subterranean, my level 50 build was a variant of that leveling build that incorporated some werewolf skills, but I finally got all the pieces that I need to make a build that I like to call the Earthling Poison build, an earth and poison mixed build based on the Changeling's Debt aspect. As a note, this build is makeable without any uniques. You can do it with only legendary aspects if you want to, but it does get a little bit better, and more than anything, it gets a lot cooler conceptually with the use of Vasili's Prayer, though again, it is not actually mandatory to make it function. That said, I've seen this actually seeming to have a pretty high drop rate in Season 1 for whatever reason. I've seen lots of druids saying they've got lots of these, so you'll probably get it sooner rather than later. The main difference here is that we use Poison Creeper to apply poison, and if you have Vasili's Prayer, it lets earth skills also do the Changeling's Debt pop, which makes our subterranean landslides immediately pop the Poison Creeper poison for massive damage in an instant. This, however, can still be done in this build with Trample, so you aren't really much weaker without Vasili's. It just requires more of a combo if you don't have it, rather than just being an instant nuke. Think of it as something to work towards to complete the build, not a necessity for the build to exist in the first place. All that said, I find this build extremely cool. I've been messing around with variations of build based on the subterranean aspect, and this is my favorite one. It essentially has the bones of a trample slide build at its core, but pushed way more towards the poison side of things in a way that is just enjoyably different to play. So without further ado, we'll start with the skill points and where to put them. We'll talk about the spirit boons that you want. We will go over the legendary aspects in use for this build, the Malignant Hearts that we use as well, general gear affixes you want to hunt for as you start to really perfect your gear, the Paragon board setup that I've got going so far this early on, and then of course how to play in general and any tips that I've got from my time using this build. Starting off then, let's dive into the skill tree. First up, you want to go for Storm Strike as your basic skill, as well as Enhanced Storm Strike, and then also Fierce Storm Strike. This gives you a Storm Magic basic skill that chains to up to 3 bonus enemies, has a 15% immobilization chance, and also a 50% vulnerable application chance, which is nasty good, as well as giving you 15% damage reduction for 3 seconds after hitting an enemy with it. Then we move on to the core skill node cluster, and we're grabbing Landslide. You're going to want all 5 ranks of this skill to really boost the damage of it. We also grab Enhanced Landslide here, and then also Primal Landslide. Primal Landslide activates the Terramote system. What this does is generate a Terramote anytime you immobilize or stun an enemy, as well as just having a flat 10% chance to generate a Terramote anytime that you hit a boss. When that happens, when you cast Landslide in any way, it will consume 1 Terramote to give you a guaranteed critical hit with a 40% increased crit damage multiplier, which is of course extremely strong. As well as this, you'll also want to grab some passives in this cluster, so we take 1 rank of Heart of the Wild to increase your maximum spirit by 3, but mostly just as a gateway for 3 ranks of Wild Impulses. This is a 9% increase to the cost of using a core skill, but 15% increase to core skill damages as a multiplier. The beauty of this is that we have a number of ways to cast core skills without actually spending spirit, and when that happens, it's essentially just free bonus damage from this passive. We also grab 3 ranks of Predatory Instinct for 6% increased crit chance on close enemies. This doesn't help Landslide specifically, but we would need to take 1 rank in here minimum anyways, and these 2 extra ranks help get us more Poison Creeper resets through the Spirit Boon that I'll be talking about later on. We use this node as well to let us grab 3 ranks of Iron Fur. This is 9% damage reduction while in bear form and for 3 seconds after exiting bear form. Then we take the very unusual move of skipping the defensive node cluster entirely, and then we put 5 points into Poison Creeper. This increases the poison damage of the skill itself, which is particularly important. We also grab Enhanced Poison Creeper, which extends the immobilized duration, and then we grab Ferocious Poison Creeper to extend the poisoning duration by 3 seconds, which as you can see, if I unselect it and then reselect it more, it pretty much just doubles the damage of Poison Creeper. It goes from just under 10,000 to just under 20,000, which is a massive increase for the way that we're going to be doing it. A lot of people would actually take Brutal Poison Creeper here, which increases your crit chance a ton against enemies that are strangled by the vines, but given that our main source of damage in this build is actually Landslide, which has guaranteed crits, that seems sort of pointless. The fun part of this is increasing the damage of the skill by increasing the duration of it, just lets us nuke harder using Changeling's Depth, as that gives us more poison to consume in one blast when triggering that effect. On top of this, we also grab 3 ranks of Call of the Wild to increase Poison Creeper's damage by 30%. In the Wrath skill node cluster, we're going to be taking Hurricane, as well as Enhanced Hurricane, and then also Savage Hurricane. This, more than anything, is just to give us a pretty constantly active radius of damage around us, with multiple chances to crit, and then proc some of our other bonuses, as well as making enemies within its radius deal 20% less damage, which is a really important boost to our tankiness. After that, we're going to be grabbing Trample, as well as Enhanced Trample, but then not any further enhancements here, as it's just unnecessary to the build to have either of those. This gives you an important movement ability that also has Unstoppable, so it can break you out of crowd control, and even more than that, it becomes a very important damage ability and another way to reset Poison Creeper within our build thanks to the legendaries we're using. We also grab some passives here, which are going to be 3 ranks of the Crushing Earth passive for a 15% damage increase multiplier. With Earth skills against slowed, stunned, or immobilized enemies, we apply slow just constantly, so this is a consistent bonus. Then we're also going to be grabbing 3 ranks of Safeguard, which makes Earth skill critical hits fortify you for 7% base health. This is what keeps us at high fortify numbers constantly due to all the landslides going off with Terramotes. Then we also have 3 ranks of Stone Guard, which is a 12% damage increase multiplier to Earth skills when you have more than 50% of your health is fortify. We're also going to be grabbing 1 rank of Neurotoxin. This slows any poisoned enemies, which is nice to have, and then also 3 ranks of Envenom for a 30% crit damage increase multiplier against poisoned enemies. It says additive, it is multiplicative, it was a bug that's been happening since the patch. This mostly just affects our Changeling aspect pops, but that is where a big portion of the damage in this build comes from, so it's still very, very juicy. Then, as we move into the ultimate skill node cluster, we will be grabbing the Petrify skill, which is just awesome in this build. We're also going to be taking the first enhancement here, but not the second, as we don't need the spirit that it provides. As a whole then, this skill stuns all enemies within its very large radius for 4 seconds, as well as also giving you a 30% increased crit damage multiplier against petrified enemies. Against bosses, the crit damage is increased to a 50% multiplier, and also lasts for 7 seconds, which makes it still very good at single target. This combos in very incredible ways into this build, to put it simply. I will explain the full combo that we've got going on once we've gone over all the Malignant Hearts and also the Paragon board and all of that, but I am just so incredibly happy with the actual synergies at play in the build. We also are going to be grabbing 3 ranks of Defiance here for a 12% damage increase multiplier with nature magic against elites, 1 rank of Quick Shift for 5% increased damage when a skill changes your shapeshifting form, as well as 3 ranks of Heightened Senses, which gives you 12% damage reduction from elites for 5 seconds after you change your form. We change forms constantly within this build, so this is basically just constant elite damage reduction, which is incredibly helpful to have. Then finally, for our key passive, we're going to be taking Nature's Fury. This makes it so anytime that you use a nature magic skill, it has a 30% chance to proc a nature magic skill of the opposite type from the same skill node cluster. Landslide can proc Tornado or Lightning Storm, for an example. The main reason that we do this is twofold. 1, it causes more hits to happen frequently. It can also trigger from any of the landslides that we produce as well, not just the ones that we actively cast, but also the ones from Poison Creeper or also Trample, which is nutty to just launch off a massive amount of core skills simultaneously like that. 2, because of the symbiotic aspect. This reduces nature skill cooldowns when you proc Nature's Fury. We mostly use this to reduce Trample's cooldown to let you spam it more often. Then with that, let's move on to our spirit boons for the build. In the Deer path, you're going to want to take Wariness for 10% damage reduction from elites. In the Eagle path, you're going to want to take Avian Wrath, which has been fixed in the recent patch and is now properly a 30% critical damage increase multiplier. In the Wolf path, you want to take Pack Leader, which is a massive important synergy for us. This makes any critical hit that you deal have a 20% lucky hit chance to reset the cooldown of active companion skills. We have Terramotes with Landslide for guaranteed crits. We have Poison Creeper as a companion, so this gives us a reasonably solid chance of resetting Poison Creeper constantly just by, well, casting Poison Creeper itself, which is a really awesome little synergy. The bigger pack of enemies that you cast it on, the higher chance of resetting the skill that you have. And if it doesn't reset, we also have Trample's Wave of Landslides for even more chances at this with more guaranteed crits. I have gotten chains of 4 or 5 Poison Creepers in a row which is obviously silly strong for this build. Then we're going to be bonding with the snake path here, and the first boon that you're going to take is the Calm Before the Storm. This gives you a 10% lucky hit chance with nature magic skills to reduce your ultimate skill cooldown by 2 seconds. And then if you have Vasili's Prayer as a unique, you want to take Masochistic. This will make your shapeshifting skills have a 75% lucky hit chance on critical hits to heal you for 3% maximum life. With Vasili's, Landslide counts as a shapeshifting skill, so that makes this boon give you massive healing as we launch off tons of landslides, and more often than not, they are critical hits. If you are not running Vasili's, instead you want to bond with the Wolf Path and take Calamity as your final boon for an extended duration to Petrify. With that covered, let's talk about our legendaries and of course the unique. Our helmet for this is Vasili's Prayer, but as I have said a number of times, it doesn't kill the build if you don't have it, it just makes it take a slight touch more effort to use. If you don't use this, you instead want the Aspect of Disobedience for a boost to your total armor per stack that you generate, which increases every time you hit an enemy. We hit enemies very frequently within this build, so you'll have a lot of stacks. As well, if you're using a non-unique helmet, you can hunt for bonus ranks to Poison Creeper, which will increase the damage of that skill quite notably too. As for our regular legendaries then, you want a two-handed weapon, and on that weapon you want the Aspect of Retaliation. This gives an 80% damage increase multiplier to core skills, depending on how much Fortify you have. We are consistently at high Fortify levels, and that makes us incredibly strong. Here you can see my weapon that I have on is a two-handed mace. I do absolutely recommend using a two-handed staff though, if you can, both for the better innate affix of damage against crowd-controlled enemies, and for the increased attack speed that it has over a two-handed mace. I just have a mace because it's the best weapon that has dropped for me so far overall at this point in time. On your amulet, you want the Changeling's Debt aspect. This is a major focus of what makes this build what it is, allowing you to multiply the poison damage that is applied to enemies and pop it in an instant. We also have the Subterranean aspect, which I mentioned earlier. This makes Poison Creeper cast a circle of landslides when you use it, and it also increases earth damage against poisoned enemies by up to 20%. We have the Aftershock aspect, which makes every landslide pillar strike a second time for up to 12% increased damage per hit. Then our last offensive aspect is actually Trampled Earth. This makes Trample, when you use it, create 6 landslides along its route, dealing up to 80% of a landslide's normal damage. As well, this also makes Trample an earth magic skill. Then we have the Symbiotic aspect on our chest piece for up to 5-second cooldown reduction on nature magic skills when a skill of the opposite type triggers the Nature's Fury key passive. On our pants, we have the Aspect of Might. This simply gives you 20% damage reduction for up to 6 seconds after using a basic skill. And then on our boots is the Aspect of Quicksand. This makes any earth skill damage that you do slow enemies for 5 seconds, activating some of our passive skills and making our build a bit more cohesive. Then for our Malignant Hearts, we have Inexorable Force, which pulls enemies in towards you consistently while you have your ultimate active. We have the Revenge Heart as well, which gives you up to 20% damage reduction that then pops out as damage dealt when you use a defensive skill. We don't have any defensive skills in this build to activate to pop this, but the 20% damage reduction from this is incredibly strong from a singular heart anyways. If you don't feel this defense is necessary for you in particular, you can instead use a Vicious Malignant Heart. My personal recommendation if you do so would be Pitcana, as it just fits in with the concept of the build really. We are critting constantly, which makes it lots of enemies will be charged, and means that lots of these lightning bolts will be fired off. Then finally we have our Wrathful Heart, which is Creeping Death. This increases damage over time effects that we do by up to 44% as a multiplier per crowd control effect an enemy has on them. In this build, we consistently apply both slow and immobilize, and occasionally apply stun. So imagine that this bonus is doubled consistently and occasionally tripled. Unstoppable monsters and staggered bosses instead just take a flat damage bonus up to 38% bonus damage over time. As for general gear affixes, you want to prioritize ranks to Landslide on your gloves, ranks to Poison Creeper on your helmet if you aren't using Vasili's, then Lucky Hit Chance is your true best friend. You want to stack Lucky Hit Chance really hard. You want crit damage as well, as we have a ton of crit damage multipliers. You want vulnerable damage, of course, as everyone else does, and then crit chance isn't bad for your non-landslide attacks. Attack speed is also not bad for when you are fishing for trample resets through Symbiotic with basic skill hits. Aside from that, you just want the generally good affixes, main stats, total armor percent increases, damage reduction from close enemies, all that good stuff. With that covered, we're going to move on to talk about our Paragon board here. I only have my first 2 boards at this point, so that is what we'll be covering, but this does have quite a bit of room to grow even stronger at higher levels with the right Paragon board setup. For now then, from the starting board, we go up and right through the damage increase right node here, which gives you 20% increased damage straight up. Then we wrap around through the dex nodes over here to get to the glyph socket, and in here we're going to be sticking in the exploit glyph, which gives you bonus damage against vulnerable enemies, but also the secondary effect of making any enemy hit by you vulnerable for 3 seconds on a 20-second internal cooldown. This means if the first damage you do to an enemy is Poison Creeper, they will still be made vulnerable and have that taken into account for the damage, which is very important. Then we grab the required dexterity and range to activate this effect, and then proceed up the left side of the board for more flat damage increase nodes, of course, until we get to the board attachment gate. Here you'll want to stick on the Constricting Tendrils board, which has unique synergy within this build, rotate it so the legendary power and glyph socket are in the bottom left corner, then head straight up and take the right path that I have here to get to the legendary node as quickly as possible, which gives nature magic skills a 15% lucky hit chance to both immobilized enemies and also poison them for 120% of the base damage dealt over 4 seconds. The beauty of this is it both gives us terror motes when it procs because of the immobilize, and also gives us more poison to pop with Changeling's Det. It's just a really nice natural synergy for our goals within the build. Then from the beginning of the board over here, head left and up to get to the glyph socket, and here you have one of 2 choices. I have gone with the Spirit Glyph, which increases crit damage dealt, as well as the bonus effect making it so every time you get a crit against an enemy, they take increased damage from you as a multiplier, stacking up to 12%. I've done this to smooth out the damage and make the build a bit stronger in general consistent combat, or at least that's what it will do once I have the points to activate the secondary effect. The other option in here is actually the Tracker Glyph, which increases damage done to poison targets, and the secondary effect increases the duration of poison effects by 33%, which might as well read increases the damage of poison pops with Changeling's Det by 33%. Regardless of which one of these you put in here, the other one of the 2 will be the choice that you use for your next Paragon board, and from here you want to grab the rare nodes that are nearby and also the required dexterity to activate this glyph. Then you can head out the left side of the board, and that's all I've got for right now at my current level. With all that covered, then you know everything that you need to make this build as far as actually collecting the items and putting it on you. So how do you actually play it? What are the combos? What exactly is going on here to make this strong? Well, here's the general modus operandi for this build. Walk into a dungeon or an event or whatever content you are doing, keep just grouping up enemies, making them follow you as much as you can before you're actually in danger, having them follow you at a distance. Then you want to press Petrify once the group is big enough. This will stun them all and increase their crit damage taken, as well as activating the Inexorable Force Heart to pull up to 50 distant enemies into you, which piles them up really nicely. Then you activate Poison Creeper. This gets a triple bonus from the Creeping Death Heart in this situation, because the enemies are stunned by Petrify, immobilized by Poison Creeper itself, and then slowed by the poison that will be applied to them, which makes the poison actually applied be a massive amount. Then landslides will rain in a circle around the Poison Creeper radius from the subterranean aspect, guaranteed to be crits thanks to all the stuns and immobilizing that you just did, and also if you have Vasili's Prayer, these will pop the poison through Changeling's Det for a ton of bonus damage, which counts as being landslides damage of course, and thus that damage is also boosted by your crits. It's boosted by Earth skill increases, and if it triggers Constricting Tendrils, it will reapply a nice poison from that damage as well. On top of this, since every landslide is a crit, it has a 20% lucky hit chance to reset Poison Creeper, which allows you to do all of it again right away. As well, we have a 15% lucky hit chance on Earth magic skills, landslide included, to reduce the cooldown of Petrify, letting you do the full combo much more frequently. If Poison Creeper doesn't get reset by this crazy combo, you can use Trample. Trample will cast a ton of landslides for more crits and more Constricting Tendrils action too, which once again has more chances to reset Poison Creeper. If at this point Poison Creeper hasn't reset, you want to spam your basic skill on enemies to proc Symbiotic, lowering the cooldown of your Trample so you can press Trample again. Repeat that loop until Poison Creeper is once again available as your big damage nuke. Without Vasili's, the only difference is that you use Trample to pop the poison rather than just being a method of launching off more landslides. Other than that, you just want to keep Hurricane active as often as possible for the damage reduction, and that's pretty much it. The actual execution of playing the build is really simple, but the amount of synergies bouncing off of each other is just so much fun to me. I really love this build. I've been working on it for multiple days now to get it ready to share with you all. I truly believe this will stay quite strong even into the endgame. It may not compete with the top 3 Druid builds, of course, that already existed before the season, but it is still extremely strong and particularly unique in the way that it functions as well. I hope you've all enjoyed this breakdown of my Earthling Landslide Poison Creeper pop and build. I hope you enjoy using this build for yourself if you want to try it out for yourself, as it really is a ton of fun. And of course, let me know if you have any other ideas you want me to try out for Druid in Season 1 and make a proper build out of in the future. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.